The fire took everything I owned in one night. My mother needed 90 seconds to decide it wasn't her problem. I'm Wren Calloway, 33, a hospice nurse who has held more dying hands than I can count. At 3 in the morning, I stood in a parking lot watching the second floor of my life turn black. Smoke was still in my hair when I called my parents. My mother answered half asleep, irritated, and said 4 words I will never forget. Then a man in a grey jacket walked up. A fire investigator. He asked who had a key to my apartment that week, because they'd found something at the scene. A few days later, in a quiet county office, what he lifted out of a sealed evidence bag made my blood run cold. And what I did with it 48 hours after that, none of them saw coming. Welcome to Hidden Family Revenge, where the people who underestimate a quiet woman always learn her value too late, and where the truth, once written down, doesn't burn. If you've ever been backstabbed by the people closest to you and quietly dreamed of the moment they finally understood what they'd done, stay with me. This one earns it. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your own story. This is going to hit close for a lot of you. The firefighters were still rolling their hoses when the man in the grey jacket found me. I was wrapped in a stranger's coat, borrowed from a neighbor who'd fled in her socks. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. 12 years of night shifts train your body to go still when everyone else is falling apart. He introduced himself as Marcus Whitfield, County Fire Investigator. He didn't use the soft voice people use on victims. He handed me a notebook's worth of steady eye contact instead. How long had I lived there? 3 years. Was I home when it started? No, I'd been on a double at the medical center. The manager called me at 2. He wrote it all down. Then he crouched by the blackened window and photographed the same spot again and again. I followed his line of sight. He was shooting the corner where my filing cabinet used to stand, the metal one, where I kept every important document I owned. "Ms. Calloway," he said, still crouched. "Anything flammable near that cabinet?" "No." Cleaning supplies were under the sink, other side of the unit. He nodded slowly, like the answer mattered more than I understood. A younger officer murmured something I couldn't hear, and Whitfield's jaw tightened. He stood, brushed ash from his knees, and looked at me the way doctors look at you right before bad news. "I'll need to talk to you again tomorrow. Get some sleep if you can." "Nurses don't sleep," I told him. "We wait for the next alarm." He almost smiled. Then he looked back at that scorched corner one more time, and something in his shoulders told me this wasn't going to be filed under bad luck. I didn't know it yet, but the corner that burned hottest was the corner that was going to burn my family down. Before Whitfield, before any of it, I made the call every daughter makes. Standing on that curb watching the last of my life smolder, I called my mother. It rang 4 times. Dana Calloway picked up thick with sleep and already sharpened with irritation, because in our family, being woken up was a bigger crime than being burned out of your home. "Wren, it's the middle of the night." I told her the apartment was gone. There was a pause, and I let myself hope, for exactly one breath, that she'd say, "Get in the car, we're coming." Instead she sighed the sigh I'd heard my whole life, the one that meant I was being dramatic. "Well, that's terrible. But honestly, it's not our problem. You should have been more careful." "Not our problem. You should have been more careful." I stood there with soot on my teeth and let those words land. In the background I heard my father, Walt, mutter something about insurance and roll back over. Then my mother's voice changed. Dropped the sleep. Got careful. "Wren, did you have any of Grandma Opal's papers in there? The ones from the house?" I said I had to go. I hung up before she could answer, because the nurse in me had just clocked a symptom that didn't fit. My apartment was ash. My entire life was gone. And the first thing my mother worried about wasn't me. It was a stack of my dead grandmother's paperwork. I filed that away the way I file everything. Then I turned back toward the man in the grey jacket. By 9 that morning I was at a roadside motel that smelled like carpet cleaner and other people's cigarettes, filling out an insurance form on a bedspread. My phone rang. My sister, Mary, crying before I even said hello. "Oh my God, Wren, are you okay? This is awful." I told her I was fine, just tired. Before I could finish a sentence about where I'd sleep that night, she pivoted. "Listen, the box. Grandma's box. The metal one with all her documents. Did that make it? And the little fireproof case." I sat up straighter. My sister lived 20 minutes away and hadn't set foot in my apartment in over a year. She shouldn't have known I owned a fireproof case at all. I asked how she knew about it. She laughed too fast. "Mom must have mentioned it." Then she said the sentence my family has used my whole life to excuse leaving me alone with everything. "You'll be fine, Wren. You always land on your feet. You always land on your feet." It's engineered to sound like a compliment. It's actually a permission slip. It means we don't have to help her. She's strong. She'll manage. I'd worn that line like a collar since I was 9 years old. I told Mary I had another call coming in. I didn't. I just needed quiet to think. My apartment had burned 12 hours ago. My mother wanted the papers. Now my sister wanted the papers. Nobody in my family had asked one real question about whether I had somewhere to sleep. That's when I stopped grieving and started paying attention. To understand why a stack of paper mattered more to my family than my life, you have to go back 3 months, to the night my grandmother died. Grandma Opal was 84. For the last 11 months of her life, I was the one who moved in, who managed her medications, bathed her, read to her, sat up through the bad nights. Mary visited twice. My parents came for holidays and left before the dishes were done. I didn't resent it at the time. Caring for the dying is my calling, not a favor I keep score of. But Opal kept score. About 6 weeks before she passed, she asked me to drive her to see a lawyer named Vivian Osgood. She wouldn't say why. She just held my hand in the waiting room and said, "You stayed. I see who stays." A month after the funeral, Vivian called the family together and read the new will. The house on Larkspur Lane, the one Opal had lived in for 50 years, worth roughly $300,000, was left to me. Not divided. Not shared. To me. Mary stood up so fast her chair toppled. She said Opal wasn't in her right mind. She said I'd manipulated a dying old woman. My mother said we'd discuss it privately, which in our family means pressure the strong one until she folds. What none of them knew was that I'd already been careful. Weeks earlier I'd had the will notarized, made certified copies, scanned every page, and put the original somewhere it could never be touched. I'm a nurse. I document everything. It's not paranoia. It's the habit that keeps people alive. It was about to keep the truth alive too. The house went into probate. The hearing wasn't far off. My family wanted those papers gone. Then my apartment, the place they assumed held the only copy, caught fire. That afternoon I drove to my parents' house, not expecting comfort, but because the motel wanted a card I was trying to save for real expenses. Family is supposed to mean a spare room. My mother opened the door halfway. Behind her, the house was warm, lit, smelled like coffee. "Wren, we just don't have the space right now." I pointed out my old room was still, technically, my old room. She said they used it for storage now, for Mary's kids' things, for a dozen small reasons that added up to no. My father appeared behind her, hands in his pockets, and offered the sentence he uses to dodge every hard thing. "You know how to handle yourself, kiddo." Then my mother, softer this time, which made it worse. "It's really not our problem to solve, honey. You'll figure it out. You always do. Not our problem." Twice in one day. I stood on the porch of the house I grew up in and understood something with total clarity. They weren't cold because they were cruel. They were cold because being cold to me was free. I never made them pay for it. I always figured it out. Always landed on my feet. Always let them off the hook. So I did something I had never done before. I stopped asking. "You're right," I said. "I'll handle it." I meant it in a way she didn't hear. I drove back to the motel, sat on that ugly bedspread, and opened a fresh document on my phone. At the top, I typed one word: timeline. If my family wanted my crisis to be mine alone, I was going to solve it the way I solve everything. Completely. The insurance adjuster came to the motel 2 days later. A tired woman named Denise Farrow with a clipboard and low expectations. Most fire victims, she told me, have nothing. No inventory, no receipts. They stand in the ashes trying to remember from memory, and they get pennies. Then I opened my laptop, the one thing I'd had with me the night of the fire, and showed her the folder. Photographs of every room. Receipts, scanned and dated. A spreadsheet of major possessions with serial numbers. Because 3 years earlier I'd done a full renter's inventory in one long Sunday and never let it lapse. Denise looked at the screen, then at me, and her whole posture changed. Honey, in 11 years I've never seen a claim this clean. Documentation. My family thought my careful habits were fussiness, the boring quirk of a woman with no life. Denise understood they were the difference between being made whole and getting nothing. She flagged the claim to move fast. Then, almost as an afterthought, she frowned at her paperwork. Just so you know, the fire marshal's report lists the cause as undetermined, pending investigation. It's not marked accidental. I asked what that meant. She said carefully that accidental fires close quick, that pending investigation usually means somebody upstairs isn't satisfied it was an accident. She left. I sat with that word. I thought about Marcus Whitfield crouched in the ash, photographing my filing cabinet from 6 angles. I thought about my mother's careful voice asking about papers. I opened my timeline document and added a line, in the same flat clinical language I use for charting a patient's decline. Cause of fire, not an accident. Everything after that, I wrote down. Whitfield called on the 3rd day and asked me to come to the county building. A floor plan of my apartment was laid out on a wide table, marked in red, orange, and hard black lines. Ms. Calloway, I've been doing this 26 years. I follow a national standard for how these get determined. It keeps me honest. He tapped the plan. In an accidental fire, you usually find a clear source. Wiring, a stove, a space heater, and the burn spreads outward in a way that tells a story. Yours didn't tell that story. Single point of origin, low, in the corner by your filing cabinet. Nowhere near an electrical source. Deep, localized burn pattern, the kind you get when something is poured, not sparked. I asked him to say it plainly, the way I ask doctors to. Someone started this on purpose, Ms. Calloway. In your home. Against the wall where you kept your papers. The room went very quiet. I've delivered death notices and watched the floor drop out from under a family. I recognized that feeling arriving in my own chest, but I didn't let it show, because the nurse in me had already moved to the next question. The practical one. Whitfield asked it before I could. Who had a key to that apartment last week? I opened my mouth to say only me. Then I remembered, and my stomach turned to ice. I answered it like a chart. In order, no emotion. The building manager had a master key, standard for any complex. I had my own. And then there was the spare. A week before the fire, Mary had called me, sweet as pie, asking to borrow my spare key to water my plants while I worked a stretch of doubles. It had struck me as odd even then. I don't really keep plants, just one stubborn succulent that survives on neglect and spite. But she insisted she was in the area and wanted to help. I was exhausted and behind, so I let it go. I gave her the spare from the lockbox by the mailboxes. Whitfield wrote her name down and underlined it. Then I told him the part that made my own hands go still. 2 days before the fire, something about the whole exchange had nagged at me enough that I'd called a locksmith to rekey the unit. Quietly get that spare out of circulation. A feeling I couldn't name had been sitting on my chest. The locksmith's first opening was 3 days out. The fire came the night before he was scheduled to arrive. Whitfield stopped writing and looked at me for a long moment. So you sensed something was wrong, and you moved to protect yourself. You just didn't have enough runway. That was exactly it. I'd seen the red flag. I'd acted on it. And whoever set the fire had simply moved faster than a locksmith's calendar. I asked him what my sister could possibly have wanted with a key to my apartment. He said that was the whole question, wasn't it? And told me not to contact her yet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the motel bed doing what I always do when a case is sliding, running the whole chart in my head, looking for the thing I'd missed. Around 2 in the morning, it surfaced. The camera. My building had a single security camera in the second-floor hallway, mounted above the fire door, angled right at the row of apartment doors, including mine. I'd walked past it 1,000 times. If Mary had used that key, the camera had seen her do it. I called the building manager the second his office opened. It was a race against a clock. Footage cycled out after 14 days. The fire had been 6 days ago. The night before was still on the server, but barely, and it would start getting overwritten within the week. He hemmed. Said pulling footage was really a police matter, that he didn't want liability, that maybe I should wait. I told him in the calm flat voice I use on families who want to give up too early, that a criminal investigation was already open, that Investigator Whitfield's name was on it, and that "we lost the footage because we waited" was not a sentence either of us wanted to say to a judge. He met me at the office at 4 in the morning. Together we sat at his little monitor and scrubbed backward through the timestamps toward the night before my life burned. My hand was steady on the mouse. It was the rest of me that wasn't. We preserved the footage that morning, copied it to a drive, handed the original chain over to Whitfield untouched, exactly the way he'd instructed. I didn't watch it in the lobby. I made myself wait and do it right. That same afternoon, my sister made a mistake that told me more than any camera ever could. Mary texted me, working the concerned sister angle again, and got chatty. She wrote that she'd heard the fire started over by your file cabinet in the corner. And wasn't that strange? Had I lost all of Grandma's documents in there? I read it 3 times. I had never told my family where the fire started. Whitfield had been explicit that the point of origin was being withheld from everyone outside the investigation, my family included, specifically so no loose rumor could contaminate the case. A couple of first responders might have their own guesses, but none of them knew my sister. And Mary had sworn up and down she'd had 0 contact with any investigator. It didn't prove she'd lit the match, but there was no innocent way for her to know which corner burned first. And she'd just put it in writing. 10 years ago I might have called her screaming. Even a year ago I might have called my mother in tears. But something in me had gone very still. I did not accuse her. I did not tip my hand. I wrote back something soft and vague, thanked her for checking in, said the investigation was ongoing. Then I screenshotted her message, logged the date and time, and forwarded it to Whitfield with one line. She knows where it started. He wrote back within the hour. Interesting. Keep everything. Don't engage. I set the phone down and caught my own reflection in the dark motel window. For the first time in a long time, I looked like someone who was not about to fold. My family had spent my whole life betting I'd stay quiet. They'd bet wrong. The next piece came from the last place I expected. A great-aunt passed that week, and the family gathered at a funeral home across the county. I went because Opal would have wanted me there, and because I've learned people say the most honest things while balancing paper plates of ham. I stayed near the edges. That's where Mary's next-door neighbor, a talkative man named Hal Brennan, found me by the coffee. He had no idea about the backstory. He just wanted to make conversation, and mentioned, laughing, that my brother-in-law Ashton had borrowed his lawnmower gas can a couple weeks back and returned it bone dry. Told him he could have at least filled it back up. Man borrows a full can, brings it back empty. His lawn's the size of a stamp. What's he doing with all that gas? I kept my face pleasant, my voice light, and asked exactly when that was. Hal thought about it and named the week of the fire. I thanked him, refilled a coffee I didn't want, and stepped outside to breathe. Gasoline. A borrowed can returned empty. The same week my apartment burned from a poured accelerant. I didn't need a recording. I had a witness who'd tell the truth without ever knowing what he'd witnessed. I called Whitfield from the parking lot. He listened, quiet, then told me the lab had come back that morning. The samples from my filing cabinet corner were positive for a gasoline range accelerant. Everything was pointing in one direction now, and the arrow had my sister's married name on it. I looked back at the funeral home, at the warm windows full of my family, and understood I was already alone in there. The next morning I drove to the bank and went down to the safe deposit vault, because it was time to hold the thing they thought they'd burned. When Opal asked me to keep her papers safe, I hadn't put them in my apartment. I'd put the originals here, behind a steel door, under a key only I held. The clerk left me alone in a small private room with the long metal box. I opened it. On top, the original will. Notarized. Embossed. The raised seal still crisp under my thumb, leaving the house on Larkspur Lane to me in language no fire could smudge. My family had spent a week clawing for these papers. They'd burned my apartment believing the will was inside. Here it sat, untouched, cool to the touch, more real than ever. But that wasn't what stopped my breath. Underneath the will was an envelope with my name on it, in Opal's shaky hand. A letter I'd never seen, sealed the day she signed. I opened it right there. She wrote that she knew what would happen once she was gone. That she'd watched her own daughter, my mother, spend a lifetime keeping the peace by feeding me to my sister, and that she was sorry she hadn't stopped it sooner. Then the line I carried through everything that came after. If they fight you for the house, don't shrink. You were the one who stayed. The fire burned my copy. It never touched the original. And it never touched what my grandmother had already seen coming about her own daughters. I sat with that letter a long time. Then I slid the will and the letter into a folder, signed the vault log, and walked back into the daylight with my spine straight. They had a key to my apartment. I had the one thing they could never reach. Sitting in my car outside the bank, I let myself feel the size of the choice in front of me. There were two roads. The quiet one. Say nothing, let the probate hearing come, present the original will, take the house, and walk away while the criminal case ground along in the background, without me. Clean. Safe. Exactly what my family expected, because keeping the peace was our family religion, and I'd been raised in the church. The other road was harder. Fully cooperate with Whitfield. Hand over every screenshot, every timeline entry, every witness. Let the arson case and the probate case land in the same room, at the same time, in front of everyone. It meant my sister might go to prison. It meant my mother would learn that the daughter she'd bet on staying silent had been documenting every step. For most of my life, I'd have taken the quiet road. It's the one that keeps the appearance of family together, which we'd always mistaken for the real thing. But I thought about Opal's line. Don't shrink. You were the one who stayed. Peace built on my silence had never been peace. It had only ever been my family's comfort, paid for with my share. I called Whitfield and told him I was in, all the way, whatever the case needed. He said good, that it takes people a while to decide, and most decide to look away. I'm a hospice nurse, I told him. I don't look away from hard things. I sit with them until they're finished. Mary must have felt the ground shifting, because she went on the offensive the only way she knew how, with her mouth. My phone lit up with calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, each repeating a version of the same story. I'd manipulated a confused old woman into changing her will, isolated Opal during those 11 months to work on her, and had probably been careless enough to burn my own apartment down chasing an insurance payout. An aunt actually asked, in a syrupy voice, whether I'd considered how this looks. My sister's weapon was gossip and public shame, the family court of whispers where she'd always won, because I'd never fought back. She was betting I'd do what I always did. Go quiet. Go small. Let the story harden around me, because defending myself felt like making a scene. I wasn't playing that game anymore. Gossip lives in the dark and dies in the light, and I was about to turn on every lamp in the building. I didn't argue with a single relative. I didn't send one defensive text. I just told anyone who asked that everything would be clear at the hearing, and that I hoped they'd come. I meant it. I wanted witnesses. My sister thought she was building a case against me. She was building an audience for herself. 3 days before the hearing, I met with Vivian Osgood, my grandmother's lawyer, in a small office that smelled like old books and copier toner. I needed to know if the will could hold, because Mary's entire public story rested on one claim, that Opal wasn't in her right mind. Vivian listened without changing expression, then laid my worries to rest one by one. The new will had been executed properly, signed in front of 2 independent witnesses. Neither of them me, neither of them family. Intentional. And there was more. On the day of the signing, Opal had been evaluated by her own physician, who'd signed a statement confirming she was of sound mind and understood exactly what she was doing. Dated, notarized, in the file. The manipulation story didn't just have a weak leg. It had no legs at all. Then Vivian told me the thing that closed the door completely. Her office kept an independent copy of the executed will in their own records. Standard practice, entirely separate from mine. Even if every copy I owned had burned, even if the original had somehow been destroyed, the will existed in a lawyer's vault no borrowed key could reach. My sister had set a fire to erase a document that lived in 3 places she'd never thought to check. Vivian looked at me over her glasses. Ms. Calloway, whoever burned your apartment to destroy this will made a very expensive mistake. I'm starting to think, I told her, a lot of my family underestimated the cost of underestimating me. The night before the hearing, my father did something he'd never done. He drove out to the motel alone and stood in my doorway looking older than I'd ever seen him. I let him in. He sat on the edge of the bad chair, turning his hat in his hands. For one unguarded moment, I thought I was finally about to get the apology I'd waited 33 years for. He got close. Said he knew things had been hard on me, that maybe they hadn't always been fair, that I'd carried more than my share with Opal. My throat tightened. Then he ruined it. So I'm asking you, for the family, don't make this bigger than it has to be tomorrow. Whatever you've got, whatever's going on with the investigation, let's keep it quiet. Mary's got the kids. Your mother couldn't take it. Just take the house if that's what Opal wanted, and let the rest go. Not an apology. A negotiation. He'd driven all this way not to stand with me, but to ask me one more time, to swallow it for everyone else's comfort. I didn't feel angry. I felt something quieter, the way a long fever finally breaks. I told him I loved him. I told him I'd spent my whole life keeping things quiet for this family, and that the quiet had never once protected me, only them. I told him tomorrow the truth was going to be told, all of it, and he could sit with me or sit across from me. But it was happening either way. He put his hat on and left without another word. That same night, Whitfield called with an update that turned every scattered piece into a single picture. The investigation had crossed the line from suspicion to case. The hallway footage showed a figure entering my apartment the night before the fire. Grainy and dim, the way cheap hallway cameras always are, but it caught her height, her build, a long tan coat she wore in every season, and one clear frame of her face as she glanced up near the fire door. On its own, a good defense lawyer could pick at it. Combined with everything else, it stopped being one grainy figure and became her. Phone records placed Ashton's cell in my neighborhood that same night. Nowhere he had any business being. The gas can was documented. The lab was positive for accelerant. And the melted lighthouse-shaped keychain recovered from the point of origin. A matching pair I'd bought Mary and myself years ago on a coastal trip, back when we still loved each other, sat in an evidence locker with her name attached to every link of the chain. Whitfield told me they'd brought Mary in that afternoon for formal questioning, and she'd done the one thing guaranteed to sink her. She denied everything, flatly, angrily, told a detective she had never once been inside my apartment. Not to water plants. Not for any reason. Except my mother had already described the inside of that unit in Mary's exact words. And the hallway camera had already watched her walk through the door. She'd sealed the hole in her own story shut, with herself inside it. The prosecutor was preparing charges. Arson, insurance fraud, likely within days. I asked Whitfield if he'd be willing to attend the probate hearing as a witness if the judge allowed it. Already planned to be there, he said. Some cases, you want to see land in person. I slept that night. Actually slept. For the first time since the fire. I saw my sister once before the hearing, and it nearly undid me, which I think is the point of telling you about it. I arrived early at the courthouse. She was already there, alone on a bench in the cold marble hallway, staring at a piece of paper in her lap. Even from across the corridor I could read the header, a foreclosure notice. My sister was about to lose her house. The actual roof over her actual children. And somewhere in that terror, she decided the answer was to take mine and Opal's, and burn whatever stood in the way of safety. For one aching moment I understood her completely. She wasn't a cartoon villain. She was a drowning woman who'd grabbed the nearest neck and pushed it under to keep her own head above water. I almost went to her. Almost sat down and said we could figure something out. That no house was worth this, that we used to beg our parents to take us to see the lighthouse together. Then she looked up and saw me. Whatever softness had briefly crossed her face curdled instantly into something hard and hissing. "You should have just let it go," she whispered, venom low enough that the echoing hall wouldn't carry it. "You always have to be so perfect. This is your fault too." The ache in my chest closed like a fist. I felt sorry for her. I did. But being sorry for someone doesn't erase what they've done. And understanding a fire doesn't unburn your home. I gave her a small nod, the kind you give a patient past saving, and walked into the courtroom to take my seat. I set my folder on the table, squared it to the edge the way I square everything, and made my final decision about how this would go. I still had a choice. I could hand the judge the will quietly, let probate do its narrow work, keep the fire out of this room entirely, and save the arson for some later courtroom nobody in my family would bother attending. Vivian had even offered to keep it clean and separate. But I'd thought about it all week. The truth needed to arrive here, in front of these specific people, not as an ambush, but as a reckoning conducted entirely by the rules. My whole family had come, drawn by Mary's whisper campaign, filling the benches, ready to watch the greedy sister get what was coming to her. My mother sat beside Mary, chin up, certain. My father sat 2 rows back, alone, hat in his lap. Marcus Whitfield sat quietly near the aisle in a clean grey jacket, a folder of his own on his knee. I'd arranged nothing theatrical. I'd simply made sure every thread, the will, the capacity evaluation, the fire report, the witness, would be available in this room, through proper channels, on the record. The bailiff called us to order. The judge, silver-haired, reading glasses, no patience for nonsense, opened the probate file. I folded my hands over my grandmother's will and waited for the door to open. The hearing began the way these things do. Dry, procedural. My sister sat through it with a small, confident smile, because she believed she'd already won the only battle that mattered. In her mind, the will had burned in my apartment. She'd made sure of it. She thought this hearing would come down to her word against mine, a whisper contest, her favorite kind, with our mother nodding along beside her. Her lawyer opened smoothly, claiming the decedent's most recent will could not be produced, that the only known copy had been lost in a fire, and that the estate should therefore be distributed under the prior will, split evenly. Across the room, I watched my mother's shoulders relax. I watched Mary's smile widen just slightly. The judge looked over her glasses. Is the original of the most recent will available to this court, or is it not? Mary's lawyer, with theatrical regret. It is not. It was, unfortunately, destroyed. My sister let out a small breath. Relief. Victory. She turned her head and gave me a look I'll remember for the rest of my life. The look that said you should have just let it go. I met her eyes and didn't look away. I reached into my folder. Vivian rose beside me. Your Honor, the original will is available. We have it here. I stood and set my grandmother's original will on the table, the light from the tall windows falling across the raised notary seal. The room went so quiet I could hear the clock on the back wall. The judge examined it, ran her thumb over the embossed seal exactly as I had in the vault. This appears to be a properly executed original. Vivian placed a second document beside it, the firm's independently retained copy, and the physician's capacity evaluation, and the notarized statements of the 2 independent witnesses. One clean stack, built over months. Impossible to argue with. I watched my sister's face come apart in slow motion. The confidence drained out first, then the color, then a dawning, sickening understanding. The will she had burned my apartment to destroy was sitting on a courtroom table. Whole, real, its seal unmarked, because it had never been in my apartment at all. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something urgent. She didn't seem to hear him. Somewhere behind me, a relative murmured, half to herself. She always did land on her feet. This time it wasn't a dismissal. It came out closer to awe. I did not gloat. I kept my voice flat, and even when the judge asked me to confirm the chain of custody on the document, and I explained simply that I'm a nurse, that I document everything, that I'd had the will notarized and secured in a bank vault months before Opal passed, because she'd asked me to keep it safe. Plain facts, plainly said. My mother had gone white beside Mary. My father, 2 rows back, had his eyes closed. My sister stared at the will like it was a living thing that had crawled out of the ashes she'd made. Which, in a way, it had. But we weren't finished. The will only explained the why. It didn't explain the fire. And Marcus Whitfield was already rising from his seat by the aisle. Mary's lawyer, drowning now, tried to attack from another angle, claiming my caregiving had given me undue influence over a vulnerable elderly woman. It was the whisper campaign, dressed in legal language. Vivian, unhurried, produced the physician's evaluation a second time and read it aloud. Opal had been of entirely sound mind, understood the disposition of her estate, signed and dated by her doctor of 20 years. The undue influence story died right there on the record. Into that silence, the judge noticed the man in the grey jacket and asked who he was. Whitfield stood, identified himself, and explained there was an active criminal arson investigation directly bearing on why this estate's most recent will had supposedly been lost in a fire. Careful, measured. The way a man who testifies for a living is careful. The criminal case would be tried in its own courtroom, not this one. He was only here so the record would reflect why a document everyone had been told burned by accident had, in fact, been targeted. The judge asked him to summarize the basis, nothing more. In the flat, unbothered voice of a man who's done this 100 times, Whitfield laid it out like stones on a table. A single point of origin in the corner where I kept my papers. A confirmed accelerant. A witness caught on camera entering the unit the night before. A personal item recovered from that origin, later identified as belonging to Meredith Calloway Voss. The details, he said, would be proven where they belonged, at a criminal trial. But the shape alone was enough. With every fact, the room leaned further away from my sister. Benches full of relatives who'd come to watch me, shamed, turned slowly to stare at her instead. My mother's hand came up to her mouth. Mary had stopped breathing. And then my sister broke. She shot up so fast her chair screeched and toppled, and every ounce of the calm venom she'd hissed at me in the hallway detonated at full volume. "You think you deserve it," she screamed, pointing at me, her lawyer grabbing uselessly at her sleeve. "You always have to win. You always have to be the good one, the one who stayed. I'm losing my house. And she left it all to you." Her voice cracked and climbed, and she said the thing no legal defense could ever pull back into her mouth. "It was supposed to be the house, not you. The house was supposed to burn. Not, none of this was supposed to touch you." The words hit the room like a dropped plate. Her lawyer was on his feet, talking over her, trying to shout her back into silence. The judge called for order. None of it reached her. It wasn't a signed confession, and I had no doubt her lawyer would spend the next year fighting to keep that outburst out of everything. It didn't need to be. The forensics would convict her without a single word from her mouth. But in that room, in that moment, every relative who'd come to watch me shamed finally understood exactly what my sister had meant to burn, and why. My mother lunged to pull her down, hissing, "Mary, stop, be quiet." And in her panic she said too much herself, "We'll fix this, just like we always do." Half the family heard it. I did not raise my voice. I've spent my life in rooms where people fall apart, and I've learned the calmest person in the room is the one everyone finally listens to. I stood there steady while my sister came undone, and when the bailiff had reached her side, and the room had gone ringing and silent, I turned, not to Mary, but to my mother. "You told me it wasn't your problem," I said, quiet enough that the whole room had to still itself to hear me. "Turns out it was your daughter's crime. And you knew where the match was." My mother's certainty cracked down the middle. Mary was weeping now, being walked toward the doors. I picked my grandmother's will up off the table, the one that never burned, and held it against my chest the way her letter had told me to. I did not shrink. The judge admitted the original will to probate on the spot and ruled the house on Larkspur Lane mine, exactly as Opal had written it. She noted the criminal matter for the record and directed it toward the proper channels, which it was already following. Mary was formally arrested a week later, not in that courtroom, through the criminal process, on charges of aggravated arson and insurance fraud. The fraud charge came from a quiet claim of her own she'd hoped would let her profit twice. The case against her never rested on what she'd screamed in that room. It rested on the point of origin, the accelerant, the hallway footage, the melted keychain, and, in the end, on Ashton. His alibi fell apart under an hour of questioning, and facing charges of his own as an accessory, he told detectives everything. The borrowed gas can, the key, the plan to destroy the will so the estate would split and stop the foreclosure. My mother was never charged, though she spent a long afternoon explaining to Detective Alana Cruz exactly how she'd come to describe the inside of an apartment she claimed she'd never entered either. There was no celebration. I want to be honest about that. I sat in my car in the courthouse lot afterward and felt no triumph, only a deep, aching quiet. The same quiet I feel at the end of a long shift, when a patient is finally at peace. My family had burned itself down trying to keep me small. I hadn't lit a single match. I had only finally refused to hand them the water. In the months that followed, I moved into the house on Larkspur Lane and turned it into what I know best. A small hospice care home, a warm place where people could spend their last days held by someone who wouldn't look away. I hung Grandma Opal's photograph in the front hall, so she could watch over every hand I held there. Mary's case moved through the courts. She took a plea. She'll be paying for that fire for a long time, in more ways than one. I didn't go to the sentencing. Some things you sit with, some things you set down. My parents came to the house once, near the holidays, standing on the porch the way I'd once stood on theirs. My mother asked if we could put it all behind us and be a family again. I didn't slam the door. I'm not built that way, and neither, in the end, is a nurse. But I didn't fling it open either. I told them the door wasn't locked forever, but that trust is rebuilt brick by brick, not owed by blood, and that I was done being the one who paid for everyone's peace. My mother started to say, out of old habit, that I'd always land on my feet, and stopped herself. Good. Because I finally had the answer to that line, the one I'd swallowed my whole life. "You were right," I told her. "I do land on my feet. I just stopped letting you knock me down first. Fire proves what's real. Paper burns. But the truth you took the time to write down, and the spine to say out loud, does not." That's how a quiet hospice nurse outlasted the people who bet their whole lives she'd stay silent. The grey jacket. The lighthouse keychain in the ash. The will that never burned. If your strength has ever been used as the reason to leave you alone, write it down, say it out loud, and let them meet the version of you that's done shrinking. If this one gave you that rush of justice, smash like, subscribe for more stories like it, and drop your own story in the comments. Click the next video for another one.